Please, okay. We're not in. No.
Thank you very much for co-hosting me, colleagues. Good morning, distinguished delegates, excellencies. We should be starting in a few minutes, 1 minute maybe. Apologies for the delay. We just finished the meeting of the Bureau, the last meeting of this week. So we should be with you in a few moments. In the meanwhile, a kind reminder to please rename yourselves and please put in capital letters the name of the country that you're representing before your name and surname. Ideally, if you can place excellencies that you are a PR or a DPR or a colleague from capital representing your country, that would be perfect. And for the colleagues coming from the agencies as well, either the UNV and the UNCDF, but also UNDP colleagues, please place the acronym before your name and surname so everybody knows your adscription to the agencies. Ambassador Guavidza will be our chair for this morning. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning.
So, Madam, we have 90 participants. It's 10:05 a.m. So whenever you are ready, we are ready for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jody. Good morning, excellencies. Good morning to all of you delegates, or good afternoon for those joining us from several parts of the world joining this meeting. It is really a pleasure to be chairing this session as we are starting our last day of the Executive Board regular session, the second virtual regular session of this year 2020. I declare open the eighth meeting of the virtual second regular session 2020 of the Executive Board of UNDP, UNFPA, and UNOPS. This morning, we will continue the UNDP segment with agenda item 10, which is on United Nations volunteers, a report of the administrator, which can be found in document DP/2020/14. Joining me today are Mr. Murad Waba, UNDP Acting Associate Administrator, and Mr. Olivier Adam, who's the UNV Executive Coordinator. Such a pleasure to seeing you joining us, Mr. Adam. I give the floor, and such a pleasure as well to see you, Waba. We've been together all along this week. I give the floor first to Mr. Murad Waba to make some introductory remarks. The floor is yours.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, a very good morning to you, and thank you for allowing me the honor to introduce the session to present the Administrator's report on the United Nations volunteers for 2019. This is the second year of the UNV Strategic Framework 2018-2021. Before I turn over the microphone with your permission, Madam President, to Olivier Adam, the UNV Executive Coordinator, I should like to highlight the elements of the report and the close collaboration between UNDP and UN volunteers. Indeed, one of my distinguished predecessors had referred to UNV as the crown jewel of UNDP, and I am solidly supportive of that characterization. This report is the second report following the Executive Board's decision to have UNV report on an annual basis rather than on a biennial basis, and presents therefore the results of UNV in 2019, the second year of its strategic framework 2018-2021. The report highlights the importance of volunteerism as a powerful tool for governments and UN partners worldwide, including UNDP, to realize Agenda 2030, as further affirmed by General Assembly Resolution 73-140 of 17 December 2018 on volunteering for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, in which the Assembly welcomed the integration of volunteerism into all relevant issues considered at the United Nations. UNDP is truly proud to host the UN Volunteers Programme, one of the very first common services of the UN system, and therefore a precursor in many ways to our common efforts in UN development system reform. UNDP acknowledges the contributions of UNV to UNDP's strategic priorities and to supporting our delivery on our strategic plan. As the largest partner of UNV in 2019, 2,570 UN volunteers supported UNDP-led activities, 51% of whom were female and 75% national volunteers, serving in their own countries. The report also summarizes the midterm review of the UNV Strategic Framework 2018-2021, concluding that the organizational transformation work undertaken in 2018 and 2019 has improved UNV's capacity to deliver and positioned UNV as an agile organization which provides easily accessible services tailored to partners' needs. I would like to thank the more than 8,200 on-site and 13,000 online UN volunteers mobilized in 2019. These UN volunteers contribute to the strategic objectives of UNDP, but more importantly, to the strategic objectives of the United Nations, as including UN missions, often serving in challenging and remote locations and in conflict or post-conflict situations. My gratitude goes to the staff of UN volunteers, who, faced with significant change, have delivered outstanding, record-breaking results. As we are feeling the impact of the global COVID-19 pandemic, I want to recognize all the UN volunteers who are working on the front lines of the global response. Currently, close to 900 UN volunteers are serving in assignments directly related to the response, with several hundred more under recruitment. I know that UN volunteers have also suffered and have been infected with COVID-19. To them, to all the volunteers serving in these difficult circumstances, to the staff and especially to the Executive Director of UNV, you have my respect and my gratitude. Madame la Présidente, permettez-moi de m'adresser en français pour remercier Olivier Adam, qui a donné 30 ans de sa vie au service des valeurs des Nations Unies, qui a été un fort soutien du PNUD tout au long de sa carrière et qui couronne une carrière glorieuse chez les volontaires des Nations Unies. Merci, Olivier. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank you. I thank you very much for this introduction, Mr. Waba. And I cannot but echo your words towards Mr. Olivier Adam. This is a great service, and I think that it will be, I'm speaking on behalf of the board in saying how grateful we are for your service as you're ending a distinguished and brilliant career. Let me also say a few words as I'm giving you the flow about the volunteers. UNV embodies the spirit of the UN Charter. The spirit of we the people is really embodied by the volunteers. So just to say that we have seen during these times of crisis, we have seen what the volunteers and UNV has been doing in countries. But that spirit of volunteerism is really the spirit that is at the heart of the UN Charter. So with those few words, it's now my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Olivier Adam to make his presentation. Vous avez la parole, Monsieur Adam.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Mr. Associate Administrator, for your very kind and very touching introduction. As indeed it is my last board, and it's a bit emotional for me to be only remotely with you today, when I would have liked to be present with all of you in New York. And I really want also to thank you and the administrator, Achim Steiner, for your commitment to voluntarism and your support to UNV as our host entity throughout my tenure here. So on this, Madame la Présidente, distinguished delegates, Mr. Associate Administrators, ladies and gentlemen, today, as you know, I will present our key results achieved in 2019, which was, of course, the second year of our strategic framework 2018-2021, and I will give you a brief readout of the midterm review of our strategic framework, a few thoughts on the way forward, including our response to the COVID-19 crisis and the potential impact on UNV of this global crisis. First, let me say that 2019 was a record-breaking year for UN volunteers, with, as already mentioned by the Associate Administrator, 8,282 volunteers serving with 54 UN missions, agencies, funds and programs in 150 countries and territories across the globe. Never before, in the nearly 50-year history of UNV, have we deployed so many volunteers. We have, in fact, already exceeded the 7,500 target that was set for the end of our strategic framework in 2021. And it doesn't end there. Another historic milestone was reached on 15th of July last year, when we achieved full gender parity for the first time among serving volunteers. And over the entire year, 51% of UN volunteers were women. So let me now tell you a little more under both our outcome. Under the outcome one of our strategic framework, UNV promotes voluntarism as a means to implement the 2030 agenda. Our mandate has been very close to the priority of global development framework with the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. The Decade of Actions calls for citizen engagement on local action. And around the globe, we see volunteers and voluntarism expanding the space in which we achieve the future we want by engaging greater numbers of people in local and national planning and action for achieving the SDGs. Madame la Présidente, out of 47 voluntary national reviews presenting during the high-level political forum on sustainable development in 2019, 28 of these reviews reflected the contributions of volunteering to the Agenda 2030. I commend the member states for recognizing the role of their national and local volunteer groups in achieving the SDGs. In 2019, UNV provided technical expertise to 11 national and regional volunteer schemes, partnering with the Nehru Yuda Kendra Sagatan program for youth in India and the Pan American Games in Peru, among others. We engage over 500,000 local non-UN volunteers to support activities at the grassroots level. However, 11 volunteer scheme is lower than the targeted 13. The reason for this relative underperformance is due to UNV's deliberate effort to move away from small standalone projects. As you may note from the report, UNVs that instead focus on strengthening capacities for volunteer action to reach scale results. And on this indicator, UNV, in contrast, has performed well above the target. During 2019, noteworthy is that we also partnered with all 5 UN Regional Economic Commission. Last year, during each one of their annual regional forum on sustainable development, we held regional consultation on volunteerism and the SDGs. This laid the foundation for the Global Technical Meeting on Volunteerism under the Plan of Action to integrate volunteerism into the 2030 Agenda, which took place virtually this July with over 5,000 participants from across the globe. Throughout 2019, we also promoted knowledge on volunteerism. This including research on the role of gender in volunteerism for community resilience, a conference in India on data and measuring the economic value of volunteer work, and a roundtable on the contribution of volunteerism to peace and development in the Sahel region. And our outcome 2, we continued supporting the UN system by deploying, as I've said already, a record number of UN volunteers directly involved in UN's humanitarian, peace building, and sustainable development work. 49% of our UN volunteers in 2019 were national volunteers. This reflects the long-term trends towards increased opportunities for national UN volunteers in line with QCPR and enables the UN system to further strengthen national capacities in all 17 goal areas. As a side note, on 15 April this year, the share of national volunteers overtook for the first time the share of international volunteers. And of course, this trend will continue growing. Volunteering is a powerful means of implementing the SDGs, as was also recognized by the UN resolution integrating volunteering into peace and development of November 2015. Last year, 43% of serving UN volunteers reported to have contributed to SDG 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions, while 21% indicated SDG 5 on gender equality as their main focus. Rounding out the top 5 contribution lists were SDG 17 on partnership for the goals, SDG 3 on good health and well-being, and SDG 10 on reduced inequalities. To confirm the impact UN volunteers are having, in 2019, we surveyed our UN partners. The vast majority responded that they deploy UN volunteers because of our global UNV pool that offers the talent that they are needing to fulfill their mandates. UN volunteers add gender, ability, geographic origin, age, and language diversity to their workforce and present a cost-effective talent solution. 91% of respondents would recommend UN volunteers to others, and 87% of them declare that they are satisfied with our service delivery. UNDP, UN Peacekeeping and Special Political Mission, UNHCR, UNICEF, and UNFPA are the top 5 UN entities recruiting UN volunteers. In addition, between OCHA and the resident coordinator offices, 244 UN volunteers, 60% of them women, have supported humanitarian and development coordination, thus providing daily contributions to the United Nations Development System reform. As I mentioned already, after many years of focused efforts, in 2019, UNV reached gender parity among volunteers. Women now make 51% of UN volunteers. UNV achieves this by seeking and recommending highly qualified women candidates to UN partners and conducting targeted talent outreach for women professionals. In addition, as already was mentioned by Murad, 13,186 online volunteers serve through UNV. 58% of these online volunteers are women and 5% are people living with disabilities. They provided remote services to 33 UN entities and 183 public institutions and civil society organizations that are supporting the SDG implementation. The highest demand for them was for online translation, writing and editing, design and research. Mobilization of online volunteers declined in 2019 when we introduced a paid subscription to access the service platform in line with the recommendation of the board for our sustainability. Given the decline and taking into account the positive financial results for UNV overall last year, we decided to resume the provision of these services at no cost from 2020 onwards. Registration of new non-governmental organizations has reopened with a strengthened due diligence process. This year, we expect a growth in the demand for our online volunteers. Moving now to our institutional performance. The total financial volume of UNV activities in 2019 amounted to 221.3 million, a 10% increase from 2018. We continued with prudent management of our financial resources. In 2019, we reduced our cost by 5% compared to the year before. Coupled with increased volunteer mobilization, this has led to an increase in our extra budgetary reserve to 12 months of expenditure in compliance with the board-approved UNDP policy on minimum reserve. UNV received contribution to our Special Voluntary Fund amounting to 4.5 million. In 2019, contributions to the fund came from Bangladesh, China, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, India, Ireland, Kazakhstan, Sweden, Switzerland, and Thailand. I want to thank particularly these member states and those who have contributed to the fund in the past. These funds remains critical for UNV's innovation and research and for upgrading our service to member states and UN partners. It also enables us to make timely and critical investments, as has been the case this year, where we invested 1 million of this fund to immediately deploy 74 UN volunteers to support coordination, information management, and public health functions in countries severely affected by COVID-19. I would like to encourage all our member states to take a stand for volunteerism by contributing to this strategic fund. To improve our efficiency, we also have continued to streamline our business processes, in particular with the goal to reduce the average recruitment time for international volunteers. Madame la Présidente, at the end of last year, UNV commissioned the independent midterm review of our strategic framework. The review concluded that the deep organizational transformation undertaken in 2018-2019 has unleashed UNV's capacity to deliver. The global restructuring, regionalization, professionalization of country-level capacity, streamlining of business processes, diversification of volunteer modalities, and UNV's talent pool have strengthened our focus and agility and led to the record number of UN volunteers under our outcome too. The review also found that nurturing UNV's comparative advantage on evidence, knowledge exchange among our member states, and advising policy and legislation on volunteerism resulted in better global and national advocacy under our outcome 1. As you know, we have a fuller summary of all these findings in our report. Based on this midterm review, UNV proposes to revise its results framework 2018-2021 as highlighted in Annex 6 through an upward revision of the already exceeded targets and the introduction of a gender equality indicator. We will look forward to the board's consideration of these revisions. Looking ahead and taking into account the findings of the midterm review, the report presents 5 key highlights for the second biennium of the current strategic framework. The first one is that we will continue to promote volunteerism as an SDG accelerator. We will facilitate the sharing of best practice among the member states, the UN system, and participating volunteers organizations. Secondly, we will strengthen volunteerism within the UN system by continuing to be a central axis of work for UNV. Mobilizing UN volunteers for the system is key to promote the power of volunteering and to maintain our financial sustainability. Thirdly, our ongoing digital transformation supported, and I would like to thank the German government for their contribution to this transformation, will further ease processes for identifying, recruiting, and deploying UN volunteers to partners. UNV will concurrently align its institutional setup with a new business process reality based on a unified volunteer platform as a one-stop shop for our services, automation, and the integration of artificial intelligence. By the end of this year, we will also complete the review of the volunteers' conditions of service after a comprehensive consultation process, including with all UN entities through the United Nations Human Resources Network under the auspices of the high-level Committee on Management. This review will simplify volunteer management and ensure additional duty of care for our UN volunteers. Finally, as a common UN service, UNV will continue to champion United Nations reform through an ever closer collaboration with UN resident coordinators and country teams. As a source of cost-effective, flexible, and community-oriented talent solutions, UNV will strengthen its support for the preparation and the implementation of the new generation of United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. Madame la Présidente, now allow me to brief you on our response to the global COVID-19. The pandemic calls for UN entities to work closely with member states in responding to this crisis. Globally, volunteer action is filling gaps that government and other stakeholders cannot meet alone. From the start, UNV has supported the UN system with surge capacity to tackle this health emergency and to minimize its economic, social, and health impacts. In particular, national United Nations volunteers have helped meet the UN system's needs and capacity gaps also in countries with travel restrictions. Some of them have been deployed or reassigned immediately to help UN entities as medical officer, WASH specialists, information management officers, and procurement assistants. Today, close to 1,200 UN volunteers are engaged or about to be engaged in COVID-19 response assignment in 93 countries, directly supporting RC offices, WHO, UNDP, and another 20 UN entities. UN volunteers online also have enabled global citizens to support the COVID response from wherever they are. As of today, over 4,000 online volunteers delivered communication materials for increased awareness, data mapping, translation services, and other location-neutral tasks to help fight the pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, to strategically augment our support, UNV allocated $1 million from our special voluntary fund to deploy 74 national UN volunteers within the UN system for the COVID response. Experts in public health, coordination and information management are working within resident coordinators' office and country offices of the World Health Organization, our host entity UNDP, and OCHA in 56 countries. Going forward, UN volunteers will be equally suited to help with the long-term recovery efforts from livelihoods to strengthening health systems. UNV is fully committed to support integrated UN system efforts thanks to over 200,000 candidates in our global talent pool in more than 100 professional profiles and our speedy deployment timeframes. Before I conclude, I would like to really say thank you to all of you and goodbye. As was announced, this is indeed my last executive board, and truly it has been a privilege for me to be at the end of this career, to lead this organization that brings us back to the core value of the UN system. And I would like to thank all the executive board members for your close and constructive partnership over the past 4 years. And thank you also for your support to take UNV forward and for your trust in our management to undertake these critical reforms that are starting bearing fruits. Finally, I would also like to thank UNDP, UNDP's management, but also all the UNDP colleagues, and of course, my entire UNV team and each and every volunteer for their work, without which this result would not have been achieved. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Je vous remercie infiniment, Monsieur Olivier Adam, de votre présentation. I thank Mr. Olivier Adam very much for his presentation. And I can only say that, repeat that indeed, we are all extremely grateful for your service to the members, because the service is really to the member states. It is UNV and UNDP has been a fantastic vehicle, but the service to the member state. I will now open the floor for speakers. Let me just say that we do have a very long list of speakers, which is a clear indication of the importance that UN members and partners attach to the work done by UNV and volunteers. I would just like to remind all that those delivering statements on behalf of groups, please do keep your statement to 5 minutes. And those speaking on national capacity, kindly keep your statement and remarks to 2 minutes. I will announce the first 5 speakers. The first 5 speakers are going to be the following. We will listen to Malawi, the permanent representative and ambassador, who is the chair of the least developed countries group. Germany will deliver a joint statement, and we'll listen to 3 national statements, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Kazakhstan, and I will be announcing by group of 5s after those 5s. So it is now my pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Malawi and the chair of the LDC group. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And I'm delighted to make this statement on behalf of 47 LDCs. First, to thank the Administrator Hakim Steiner, Mr. Murad Waba, and the UNV Executive Director, outgoing Olivier Adon, and thanking you sincerely, Olivier, for the hard work and for leadership you have exposed during your tenure of office. We are really, really thankful. And I'm extremely glad to hear that in 2019, you actually surpassed the target of 7,500 and you had 8,282. Congratulations on that. And that you were deploying these in 150 countries. That's very good. So we want to thank you for that. And to note that 71% of the volunteers were women. It's exciting news because you know all over the UN agencies, that's what we are looking for. More participation of women in our programs, and that the national volunteers, you had 49% as national volunteers. That's good. We hope that that can increase in future because as national volunteers, you have no cost as to flying them from one country to another. So it saves money. And I'm sure that in different countries, there are enough volunteers if they are made aware of this. We are also thankful for the SDGs you mentioned, SDG 17, 3, and 10. And I'm sure that there were very good and valid reasons why the assistance went to these special SDGs, but plead that in countries, vulnerable countries, such as LDCs, their priorities are diverse, and you rightly given the figures in health, energy, food security. These are indeed very, very important priorities in LDCs. And we also note with satisfaction that you involved volunteers who are people with disabilities. That is commendable. Whilst we appreciate your budgetary output in 2019 with a reduction of 5% in expenses and added extra budgetary reserves, we appreciate that, but not that the demands in different countries for volunteers is ever increasing, and it will be increasing more now with the pandemic. So maybe our goal is not more to remain with more reserves, but to use the resources that we have to the maximum. And I want to thank the countries you mentioned who contributed to the strategic fund. I can't mention them all, but I want to thank them sincerely and invite more countries to participate in this. I want to thank you, and in that, in your future endeavors, you will have a special focus on countries with high vulnerabilities, and then in areas where those vulnerabilities are more pronounced in allocating your volunteers. I want to thank the whole UNDP UN system for this program. It is a very good program. And I thank you on behalf of all the 47 LDC countries. I thank you.
I thank Ambassador Ligoya Peraks, the chair of the LDCs group, and a dear friend for his statement. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to the representative of Germany, who will deliver a joint statement. The delegate of Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of Antigua and Barbuda, Australia, Austria, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Finland, France, Ireland, Japan, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Republic of Moldova, Sweden, Ukraine, United Kingdom, as well as my own country, Germany, we applaud UN Volunteers for its 2019 annual report and the impressive progress made towards achieving its strategic framework. We thank the Executive Coordinator Olivier Adam and the entire staff for their efforts and dedication to achieve these very commendable results. We welcome the annual report to the Executive Board as it provides measurable, transparent, and accountable indications of the progress and performance which was made under the Strategic Framework 2018 till 2021. In this decade of action, UNV is at the forefront of mobilizing national and international UN volunteers. We congratulate UNV on the deployment of more than 8,200 UN volunteers and engaging 490,000 local non-United Nations volunteers through national and regional schemes. The number of home and host countries partnering with UNV has set a new record in 2019. UN volunteers from 162 different countries were sent to 154 host countries. The services of the UN Volunteers Program provide the UN system with a unique opportunity to accelerate and localize the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. That UNV's service is of high quality and satisfaction is reflected in the rising number of cooperation partners. In 2019, 54 UN agencies used the service of UNV. These numbers show how the strong demand for UNV's services to mobilize volunteers for UN agencies, both in development programs and peacekeeping operations worldwide. The COVID-19 pandemic has made it clear that organizations need to be at the forefront of innovation and digital transformation in order to enable delivery of services and business processes, even irrespective of the context. UNV has embarked on its internal transformation and digital transformation already since 2017. Last year, 13,000 online volunteers took up assignments. We note with much appreciation the new knowledge portal and the corporate service desk with chatbots powered by artificial intelligence that respond to over 15,000 queries per month from potential volunteers, with under 5% of inquiries being escalated for human attention. These are great examples of how digital transformation can enhance UNV's efficiency and ability as a service provider to the whole UN system. Finally, we would also like to acknowledge the critical support UN volunteers provided to the rapid scale-up of the UN system's COVID-19 response. UN partners have requested and deployed almost 600 UN volunteers, 90% of which are national UN volunteers. Furthermore, over 1,700 online volunteers have supported the COVID-19 response through the UNV online volunteering service. With 81% of volunteers deriving from the Global South and 51% of deployed volunteers being female, the UN Volunteers Program is indeed a valuable tool for the UN system to leave no one behind. Efforts to support women's empowerment are indispensable. We welcome the significantly increased contribution of United Nations volunteers to gender-responsive sexual and reproductive health and rights measures in cooperation with the UNFPA. Further to that, we profoundly support UNV's inclusion agenda, including its partnership with UNDP to establish a joint talent program for young professionals with disabilities, as well as increasing engagements and opportunities to volunteer with the United Nations system, and acknowledges the importance of enhancing inclusiveness in all areas. A final remark in my national capacity. As the host of UNV in Bonn, Germany looks forward to continuing its strong partnership and engagement with UNV and commends UNV for working as an administrator for all UN institutions in Bonn. On behalf of the German government, we would like to use this opportunity to bid farewell to Olivier Adam as the outgoing executive coordinator of UNV. It has been an extraordinary pleasure to work with you, and we wish you all the best for your future endeavors. You're leaving behind an organization that has been successfully transformed, a stellar voice of volunteerism around the globe, and a powerful asset to the UN system. Thank you, Olivier, and thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Germany for her statement, both on behalf of the group and national capacity. And I now have the pleasure to give the floor to the ambassador and permanent representative of Burkina Faso. Let me remind you, dear members, to keep your national statement remarks to 2 minutes, please. Your cooperation is much appreciated. Thank you. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Content de vous voir à la présidente de nos travaux. I would like to join all the speakers to congratulate Olivier Adam, the UN Executive Coordinator, for the good job done and his entire team for the quality of the report presented to us today. Olivier, thank you very much for what you have done. I take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the valuable support that the program provides to member states, particularly those facing security, humanitarian, and development challenges, such as Burkina Faso, to achieve SDGs. In view of the achievement on the ground, it is undeniable that the contribution of international and national volunteers to the development of countries is important and highly appreciated. As an illustration, in 2019, 118 Burkinabe served as UN volunteers, thus contributing to the peace and development initiative to the UN system around the world, and at the same time, strengthening the fruitful cooperation between Burkina Faso and UNV. Since 2011, more than 27,000 national volunteers have been deployed in the framework of UNDP support project. This year, with the COVID-19 pandemic, UNDP and UNFPA, as part of the government's response plan, support the National Volunteer Program for Development with the deployment of nearly 2,000 of 15,000 volunteers deployed in the field to help combat the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Madam Chair, in 2019, the executive coordinator said that 81% of UN volunteers come from country of the South, which clearly highlights UNV's contribution to South-South cooperation, as well as to supporting a geographical balanced UN system. But this already significant contribution could have been further enhanced by the allocation of multi-years and predictable core resources to UNV. My delegation therefore expressed its wishes in that regard, which will enable the program to carry out its action in favor of development and peace in a sustainable manner. And I thank the countries mentioned for their contribution. For its part, Burkina Faso welcomed the fact that traditional solidarity, volunteerism, and living together are values that are still firmly rooted in this tradition of the people of Burkina Faso. Indeed, these values were demonstrated with the IDP, several hundred of whom were taken in by host families, who helped them to save their honor and dignity alongside the government with the support of technical and financial partners. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate the gratitude of the government of Burkina Faso to the UN volunteers, to the executive coordinator, and to both national and international volunteers for their dedication and support in a context of security, humanitarian, and health crisis. I thank you very much.
I thank very much His Excellency Ambassador Thiaré of Burkina Faso for his statement. And I now give the floor to His Excellency the Ambassador of Cambodia. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to begin by thanking Mr. Olivier Adam, UNV Executive Coordinators, for his presentation of the report. I wish also to thank him for his contribution to the UNV and the service extended to the member state. I wish him all the best for his future endeavor. Madam Chair, together with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport and the Cambodia Volunteering Network, UNV supported the implementation of a project that aims to increase decent work opportunity for the Cambodian youth through enhancing their technical capacity and facilitating the accreditation of skill gained through volunteerism, and by providing youth with tools to engage in the social entrepreneurship. This project established volunteer program focused on developing transferable skill of youth who were matched with the volunteer placement and pursued paid opportunity after the program. It also trained those volunteers through 6 specialized training modules. In addition, it increased the capacity of the government of Cambodia to implement mechanisms to manage volunteers, including an online platform for matching volunteers with opportunity, a knowledge product on volunteerism and labor market demand, and 2 career development and the placement centers. So far, this project, which started in 2017, trained 1,781 local young people in entrepreneurship, putting them in charge of their own career development. Cambodia has a large generation of youth under age 35, with youth making up over 65% of the total population. Youth voice, views, and participation are determinant and indispensable component in the national, regional, and global development, making youth development one of the government priorities. As such, volunteerism has been identified as one of the key tools for promoting youth development. Youth volunteerism has been transformed from the national policy level to the education sector strategic plan 2019-2023 and down to the grassroots level. Our Prime Minister has officially recognized setting up volunteering network at the grassroots level, as well as the 5 strategic recommendations during the 2019 National Education Congress. Based on lessons learned from pilot volunteering programs set up in partnership with other government sector, private sector, UNV and UNFPA, Cambodia recently set up a national volunteering program, Volunteering for My Community. The 6th Global Youth Camp under the theme Youth for IR 4.0, and the 1st Senior Scout Camp under the theme Innovative Leaders, which we hope to expand more in the future. Through this program, youth are given the skill and opportunity to design their own community project in line with the SDG and to become leaders of change. Volunteering programs have opened up the space for youth to become part of the solution for sustainable development in Cambodia. Cambodia recognizes volunteerism as an important tool to implement the sustainable development goals. To further strengthen volunteerism effectiveness, we integrate the 4 global youth development domains, participation and volunteerism, into the National Action Plan for Cambodia. Youth development further ensure that youth volunteering service will become part of the accreditation system, post-credit provision of all levels of education. I would like to end by thanking UNV and its leadership for its continuous support to the member state, in particular in Cambodia, to realize the implementation and localization of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I thank His Excellency the Ambassador of Cambodia for his statement. I now have the pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency the Ambassador of Kazakhstan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm pleased to join this distinguished session of the Executive Board. I wish to thank the UNV Executive Coordinator, Mr. Olivier Adam, for his noteworthy and impressive presentation of the UNV 2019 Annual Report. We want to commend him for an excellent job at the head of this organization, energizing its work, and since he is leaving his post, we wish all the best in his future endeavors. The record of activities reflects the laudable work of UNV with its remarkable achievements, future plans, and vision. I take this opportunity to reconfirm our strong support for UNV's efforts to achieve peace and development through volunteerism worldwide. These efforts are so critical and needed, particularly in today's most challenging times, when we are beset not only by the COVID-19 pandemic, but as Secretary General Antonio Guterres has stated, the pandemics of poverty, hunger, unemployment, racial injustice, and inequalities, to mention just a few. Volunteerism is deeply rooted in Kazakh society. We have always promoted dynamic and committed volunteerism to partner with UN and support key movements at global, regional, and national levels. To enhance the support for volunteerism, a special department has been established under the Ministry of Information and Social Development of Kazakhstan. In 2018, the roadmap for volunteerism was adopted to promote the coming forward of citizens, young and senior. This blueprint also strengthened measures to provide a legal environment and framework for volunteerism. To mobilize volunteers and create new opportunities for active and capable enthusiasts, my president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, declared that this year as the year of the volunteer. I wish to take this opportunity to thank UNV for providing its expertise and support in formulating the action plan of the year of the volunteer. The finest volunteers with their initiatives that have contributed to the development of Kazakhstan in addressing critical social issues will be recognized and given the Volunteer of the Year International Award instituted by the government of Kazakhstan. To further strengthen this cooperation, in 2019, the government of Kazakhstan signed a partnership agreement with UNV to fund international specialists and youth UN volunteers for 2020. Through this initiative, 7 Kazakh citizens will be provided with the opportunity to serve in the United Nations system. This will enable them to further share their knowledge and expertise while gaining unique learning experiences and widening their professional horizons. To conclude, I would like to commend UNV's leadership for its successful track record of the midterm results of its strategic framework, and we wish every success as it goes forward in this historic 75th anniversary of the United Nations and beyond. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Ambassador Kairat Umarov for his statements. And it is here also the place to thank very much Kazakhstan for the contribution to the strategic fund. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to announce, first of all, the next 5 speakers. They will be in the following order: Gambia, Russia, the Russian Federation, Vanuatu, China, Sweden. So these are going to be the next 5 speakers. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to the representative of Gambia, You have the floor. Let me remind again, once again, dear members, please do keep your remarks to 2 minutes so that we can give everyone has a chance to address this specific session. Thank you very much. You have the floor, Gambia.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
Thank you.
You do have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and we thank you for your leadership. We also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Olivier Adam for his years of dedicated service to UN volunteers and the successful milestones that UNV registered in 2019. The Gambia welcomes the positive 2019 results presented by UNV's executive coordinator and would like to thank UNV for its continued efforts to provide inclusive volunteer solutions. With over 7,500 volunteers deployed and attaining the target for 2019, and with 51% of volunteers as female and with 49% as national volunteers. I think these are important milestones. With 81% of the volunteers deployed volunteers coming from Southern Hemisphere, the United Nations Volunteers Program is an effective tool for enabling South-South cooperation. We would also like to note that 36% of those volunteers originated from the region of Sub-Saharan Africa, with close to 100 Gambians being deployed as UN volunteers over the past 10 years, and with UNV fostering its close connections to regional bodies such as the African Union and ECOWAS. Madam President, COVID-19 continues to devastate the global community, and we would like to commend the UNV for supporting the UN system's response and recovery efforts with more than 600 UN volunteers and 1,700 online UN volunteers actively engaged. Again, Madam President, UNV's positive results highlight the importance of voluntarism for the implementation of the Agenda 2030 and its sustainable development goals, enabling the UN system and its member states to follow people-centered approach. Madam President, reliable core contributions further ensure UNV's ability to continue to provide its invaluable services, and we are therefore urging donors to maintain their support in line with the call by the executive coordinator. Madam President, we thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Gambia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the Russian Federation. You have the floor, please. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. Can you hear us? Are you online?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well and loud. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Dear colleagues, we thank UNV Coordinator, Monsieur Olivier Adam, for his report and all hard work and dedication he showed during the years of serving for the UN volunteers. We also thank you, Mr. Adam, for your personal engagement in developing cooperation with Russia and your visits to our country, including in 2018, when the memorandum on the fully funded program on the participation of Russia's volunteers in the work of UN agencies was signed. We believe UNV gives great new opportunities to both young people and UN agencies to develop, to improve, to learn from one another. Mr. President, we would also like to commend the overall progress that UNV managed to achieve over the past years. Last year, the program allocated a record number of volunteers to a wide range of UN agencies, as well as reached most of the indicators of its strategic plan. It's important that UNV continued helping governments to develop policies on volunteering, which we view as an important tool in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. This year, UNV successfully organized a comprehensive and multi-stakeholder global technical meeting on volunteerism on the sidelines of HLPF 2020. We would like to give special thanks to the Regional Bureau for Europe and Central Asia for a breakup session about volunteers in our region. Mr. President, Russia is a strong supporter of the volunteer movement. The federal law of the Russian Federation on volunteerism outlines a number of support measures for volunteers and simplifies their relations with other stakeholders. Last year, Russia organized the second international forum on volunteerism in Sochi, and UN Volunteers was an active and supportive participant of this event. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention.
I thank very much the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation for his statement. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Vanuatu. Vanuatu, you have the floor.
Madam President, thank you for giving me the floor. Vanuatu believes that volunteerism stands at the core of a people-centered approach to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that it can indeed be leveraged to address the unique challenges SIDS and LDCs are facing. By deploying UN volunteers to UN entities, the program can further be leveraged to support the UN system, to overcome programs, delivery gaps, and advance the Samoa pathway priorities, promoting inclusion within the UN, including for people with disabilities, indigenous populations, and in meeting gender parity targets in the most inclusive and efficient manner. The COVID-19 pandemic has also significantly impacted the already vulnerable SIDS and LDCs, and I would like to thank the 53 UN national and international volunteers during the first half of 2020 that have actively supported the UN system's COVID response in the Pacific. In Vanuatu, in 2020 alone, we have benefited from 5 UN volunteers serving with the UNRCO, UNDP, UNFPA, and UNCDF. The volunteers were very useful in dealing with dual humanitarian crisis of the tropical cyclone Harold in April of this year amidst COVID-19. They provided critical support in various areas through interagency response. We wish to thank the Australian DFAT for deploying 2 international UN volunteers to Vanuatu this year. They were part of 13 volunteers, 5 specialists, and 8 youths to 6 Pacific Island countries with 7 UN agencies under its new fully funding partnership with UNV. The UN volunteers have been providing invaluable support to the implementation of the UN reform and humanitarian responses. We continue to witness steady growing numbers of national UN volunteers as well as international UN volunteers from the Pacific serving within the region. Volunteering functions as instrumental talent exchange and skills development tool among the Pacific Islanders, further promotes South-South cooperation by supporting unique local knowledge sharing and innovation. Vanuatu welcomes the 2019 UNV report presented this morning and further encourages the board membership to promote contributing more to UNV's special voluntary fund to further enable the program to pursue its mandate in a flexible and efficient manner. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Vanuatu for his statement, and I now have the pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from China. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies and colleagues, thank Associate Administrator Mr. Mulad for his introduction, and also thanks Executive Coordinator Mr. Adam for your comprehensive report. It's an excellent year. China highly appreciates UNV's progress in implementing the strategic framework under the able leadership of Executive Coordinator, Mr. Adam. We recognize the big potential of volunteerism and the important contributions of volunteering towards the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. China values its long-standing cooperative relationship with UNV. In 2019, we launched 2 new projects with the UNV program. The first was to provide fully funding for 30 Chinese UN volunteers. This project laid a good foundation for further expansion of the fully funded program and engagement on global plan of action from China. The second was focused on supporting the creation of an international training platform for young volunteers, where UN youth volunteers and other Chinese and international volunteers, they can be trained on SDGs and volunteering. In 2019, 85 Chinese volunteers were deployed to national and international assignments. UNV's Special Voluntary Fund enables UNV to flexibly and strategically allocate resources to deliver its dual mandate. China has long been a consistent supporter of that fund. We wish more and more parties can consider contributing to the Special Volunteering Fund in support of a UNV. As many previous speakers has mentioned, the great value of volunteerism in our fight against COVID-19. So more funding to the Special Volunteering Fund is much needed. I wish to join previous speakers to commend Mr. Adam for his valuable service. But I also wish to congratulate you after so many years of tireless work. I hope that you'll continue to care and support the cause of international development. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors after retirement. And very good luck. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I thank very much the distinguished delegates of China, and I appreciate that you indicated that it is a Madam Chair, indeed. I now would like to give the floor, it's a pleasure to give the floor to the representative of Sweden. You do have the floor, Sweden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Sweden would like to express its gratitude to the UNV Executive Coordinator and the excellent report on the work of UNV. We have a long-standing cooperation with UNV, contributing to the Special Voluntary Fund since 2001. Sweden values UNV as a flexible and efficient partner and for its innovative approach in finding new and more inclusive solutions. We commend UNV's ability to rapidly adjust and provide support to member states and UN partners to the global COVID-19 response. Sweden has therefore pledged an additional 6 million Swedish crowns to the Special Voluntary Fund. And we will also advance the disbursement of our contribution plan for 2021 of 9 million Swedish SEK for a total of 50 million Swedish crowns to be dispersed in the coming weeks in order to support UNV's continued COVID-19 response efforts. Finally, we wish to take this opportunity to specially thank the UNV Executive Coordinator, Mr. Olivier Adam, for his leadership of UNV and his long and dedicated service to the UN. Mr. Adams has spearheaded significant changes in UNV over the last couple of years that have positioned the organization well in their continued work and contribution for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you, Mr. Adams. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Last, but perhaps most important, Sweden extends its gratitude to UNV staff and volunteers around the globe for their dedicated work and contribution to the Agenda 2030, especially those working in difficult environments. Your efforts are noticed and much appreciated. We also like to take this opportunity to pose a question to UNV. Sweden is deeply engaged with the UNDP UNV Talent Program for Young Professionals with Disabilities, and we have expressed interest in expanding the program to include more agencies, funds, and programs apart from UNDP. We understand there is some work underway in this regard. but would like to hear more about the possibilities to expand it to include the full UNDG and what the envisioned next steps are in this regard. Thank you for your attention, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I thank very much the distinguished delegate of Sweden. And I now have the pleasure of announcing the next 5 speakers to help you prepare. The next 5 speakers will be Japan, Peru, India, the Republic of Korea, and the Czech Republic. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Japan associates itself with the statement delivered by the German delegations and would like to take this opportunity to make a few additional remarks. UNB has been an important partner in our effort to support developing countries in achieving the SDGs. As a co-facilitator of the GA resolution called Volunteering for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, end quote, Japan wishes to congratulate the successful convening of the Global Technical Meeting in July, which provided a platform to highlight the important contribution of volunteers to the localizing and realizing the SDGs. On tangible actions on the ground, among the many areas of our collaboration with UNB for achieving the SDGs, universal health coverage, UHC, which received a heightened attention amid the COVID-19 pandemic, is one area in which UNB made an important contribution through their program called the Global Health Volunteer Initiative. At the outset of the pandemic, which caused a serious human security crisis, Japan launched a joint project with the UNB to deploy 15 Japanese, including many public health and hygiene professionals, as UNB volunteers to assist the various UN agencies in their response on the ground. In 2019 alone, 111 Japanese nationals served as international UN volunteers, including 33 UN university volunteers, in delivering various kinds of expertise and services, such as in peace building, wash, food, security, livelihood, disaster risk reduction, and youth empowerment through the Global Peace Builders Program and partners such as JICA and Japanese universities. Japan fully acknowledged the positive outcome and the progress made under the strategic framework as laid out in the annual report, and would like to express our gratitude to the excellent contribution made by Mr. Olivier Adam during his almost 4 years of service as executive coordinator and his entire team. In closing, Japan would like to reiterate our strong expectations for UNB's unique role and functions in our effort to achieve the SDGs during the decade of action. I thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank very much the distinguished delegates of Japan. I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to the distinguished delegate of Peru. You do have the floor.
Thank you, Madam.
Peru, oh, okay, thank you. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam. Peru would like to thank Executive Coordinator Olivier Adam for his comprehensive presentation of UNV's performance in 2019 and the midterm review of the strategic framework 2018-2021. We consider UN volunteers an important and effective tool for development, which if organized and steered correctly can have major impact. In that regard, we commend UNV's leadership in implementing its 2018-2021 strategic framework, as well as its engagement in Peru, where it has proved its value in especially harsh times during this pandemic. In that regard, we would like to highlight UNV's work in close collaboration with our government, where both of the strategic objectives indicated in the above-mentioned report have been actively engaged. Among them, it is worth mentioning the important participation of volunteering programs for major events, like the Lima Pan American Games of 2019 and the upcoming Bicentennial Independence Commemoration Plans, both pertaining to Outcome 2 of the report. Also, in light of the current global crisis, under the lead of the Peruvian Ministry of Development and Social Inclusion, UNDP, and UNB were able to mobilize 12,000 digital volunteers to assist 176,000 senior and disabled citizens by checking on COVID-related symptoms, their emotional state, and their support systems via telecommunication services. This initiative has ensured that the elderly and other vulnerable groups are able to remain isolated, helping to further flatten the curve of new infections. Finally, we would like to underscore, as we have in previous discussions, the importance of the UN reforms and the challenges faced in this restructuring process. Looking forward, UNV will need to continue its work with improved practices, systems, and effectiveness to engage with harmony and tact in a situation that was not foreseen and which has accentuated the problems of inequality, poverty, and others at the global level, with the final objective of advancing and helping deliver national policies and strategic plans in this decade of action. And to conclude, we would like to wish Mr. Olivier Adam all the best in his future endeavors and thank him for his dedicated work in UNV. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Peru for his statement, and I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to the distinguished delegate of India. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We thank UN Volunteers Executive Coordinator Olivier Adam for his presentation on the key results of the UN Volunteers Annual Report, and ASG Wahba for introducing the report and placing it in context. We join other executive board members in congratulating UNV on a truly exceptional year with record-breaking deployment of volunteers. Madam President, India has a rich history of people's participation through volunteerism, which has been embedded in our historical, social, and religious traditions. In 2019, the Government of India and the United Nations Volunteers Program continued their long-standing partnership, with over 200 Indians being deployed as international and national volunteers, actively contributing to the activities of UN entities such as UNDP, UNMISS, UNAMID, and UNICEF. Moreover, recognizing the success of the joint project strengthening Nehru Yuva Kendra Sangathan, NYKS, and National Service Scheme, NSS, between the Government of India, UNDP, and UNV, India has decided to extend the project until December 2020 and scaled it up from 29 to 58 districts, contributing a total of $4.09 million to phase 2 of the project from 2018 to 2020. NYKS, together with UNV and UNDP, have also been active in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. They have engaged young people in important areas such as cleaning and disinfecting public spaces, producing PPE, combating misinformation, and distributing groceries to vulnerable people. India also welcomes UNV's success in demonstrating that inclusivity is indeed a priority for the program by supporting South-South cooperation, with nearly 80% of its volunteers originating from the Global South and reaching the objective of gender parity among serving volunteers in 2019. India has been contributing to UNV's Special Voluntary Fund for many years and increased its annual SVF contribution from $15,000 to $20,000 in 2018. We encourage our fellow board members to support the UNV program through contributions to this fund, which would enable UNV to flexibly allocate resources to strategically relevant areas. Finally, my delegation extends our very best wishes to Executive Coordinator Olivier Adam as he moves on from his role and thanks him for his service to UNV. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank very much the distinguished delegate from India for her statement. I now wish to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation also would like to thank Executive Coordinator Olivier Adam for the comprehensive statement this morning. As one of the major partners to UNV, the Republic of Korea welcomes the outstanding performance from UNV's midterm review of the current strategic framework. Recognizing UNV's unique role in providing professionals, youth, and university students with valuable opportunity to engage in the SDG implementation, the Korean government deployed 190 Korean nationals as UN volunteers this year. In this connection, we welcome and support UNV's contribution to positioning and advancing the topic of volunteerism worldwide, particularly through organizing the General Assembly mandated Global Technical Meeting last July. The GTM served as the platform to showcase the indispensable contribution volunteers make to society and to localizing and advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Moreover, we would like to emphasize UNV's ongoing effort to support the UN system's COVID-19 response very actively with 600 on-site and 1,700 online UN volunteers engaged in relevant activities. Given the current situation of limited physical presence due to COVID-19, my delegation encouraged UNV to explore more ways to leverage e-volunteerism to accelerate the SDG implementation and effectively respond to the pandemic. Allow me to reiterate Korea's strong and steadfast support to UNV program. And finally, I would like to join others to wish Executive Secretary Olivier Adam all the best, and we really appreciate your commitment for the last 40 years. Thank you very much, Madam. Over to you.
I thank very much the distinguished delegate of the Republic of Korea for a statement. Now I have the pleasure of giving the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Czech Republic. You do have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. The Czech Republic would like to acknowledge its valuable and long-established partnerships with the United Nations Volunteers Program and congratulates the Executive Coordinator, Mr. Olivier Adam, the whole UN volunteers team, all the UN volunteers around the world, and the UN volunteers partners for the positive results of 2019. Last year, the 25 Czech nationals served as UN volunteers, of which 17 UN youth volunteers were funded by the government of the Czech Republic. Since 2001, the Czech Republic and the UN volunteers have been partnering on the fully funding program, which provides valuable opportunities for young professionals to support the work of the UN system and gain first-hand experience in the areas of development and peace. The Czech Republic has further been continuously providing contributions to the UN Volunteers Special Voluntary Fund on an annual basis. We appreciate that the fund enables the UN volunteers to implement its mandate in the most agile manner, for example, by developing innovative volunteer-based solutions, undertaking research and knowledge sharing, as well as scaling up transformative projects and react to emergencies, such as the UN volunteers' contribution to the COVID-19 response. The fund is therefore appreciated, especially in these challenging times. I would like to end by congratulating the program for its digital transformation efforts, as well as for achieving full gender parity among its serving volunteers in 2019, commending the UN volunteers for truly demonstrating its prioritization of implementing an inclusive approach. I thank you very much et je vous remercie, Monsieur Olivier Adam, pour tout ce que vous avez fait. Thank you.
I thank very much the distinguished delegate from the Czech Republic. It's now my pleasure to let you know that this closes my list of members having requested for the floor. I hope I'm not missing any member. If that is the case, please, I will give you 2 seconds to indicate so. I understand that, is there any member who wishes to take the floor? I see none on my list and none raising their hand here in the chat function. This has been a very long meeting, much longer than we had anticipated and planned for, but only for good reasons, which we all alluded to as we started the meeting. Since members, there are no more members wishing to take the floor, it is now my pleasure to give the floor to the World Health Organization, which is requested to take the floor during this session. And we will hear from the WHO Regional Director for Africa, Dr. Moiti, which is also an indication of how much UNV has been of value to the entire UN system. WHO, are you with us? If so, it is my pleasure to give you the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Excellencies, distinguished partners and colleagues, and the leadership of UNDP and the UNV program. I'd like to express my great appreciation for the excellent work of the UN Volunteers program. In the past years, we in WHO have benefited extensively from the skills and knowledge of over 430 UNVs in supporting our member states to strengthen health systems and prevent and control diseases, thereby contributing to better health of populations globally. And I have to say here that we are working very hard to do better and benefit even more from the UNVs and match our sister agencies that were being quoted as having done the best. In the African region, since 2016, we've expanded our engagement with UNV as part of the regional and now part of the global WHO transformation agenda. This has resulted in more than 230 national and international UNVs serving with WHO in African countries in the past 4 years. In March of this year, it was my great pleasure to launch jointly with Mr. Toili Kurbanov, the Deputy Executive Coordinator of the UNV program, the Africa Young Women Health Champions Initiative, to recruit 100 volunteers from the Global South towards empowering the African continent's next generation of female health leaders. I'm very pleased to report that despite the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, and here I would like to commend and thank our colleagues in UNV for all that you are doing in supporting the response to the pandemic in Africa and in other regions. So we already have 36 UNVs that have been recruited under this initiative, and almost 90% of them are female. So this is a great achievement, we feel, and a great start to our ambition to identify female talent in the region and beyond, particularly in the South, link it with our work in WHO, and identify from this group of hardworking, talented people, future staff of WHO, because we are working very much to also improve our gender parity in our staff in the organization. These volunteers will help WHO in scaling up health program delivery, in supporting the continuity of essential services during the pandemic, and in reaching vulnerable groups, including women and young people. I'm really excited in my interaction with them to see the excellent contribution they're already making to a range of programs in WHO, to our COVID-19 work, to the polio eradication work, where we have recently had recognition of the achievement by the region, in our partnership work in immunization, and very strongly in our communications team, which is helping us get the word out about the COVID-19 pandemic and other health problems. WHO also commends UN volunteers for his fast and effective support indeed to the COVID-19 response. Thank you for mobilizing additional resources as well as the large number of people that you have sent around the world. So in closing, I'd like to reiterate the immense value of the UN Volunteers Program to our work in WHO, to sustainable development in the region, and to assure you of our continued commitment in working with the UNVs to save lives, to promote health, and to serve the vulnerable, to contribute to development on the continent. I thank you very much for the opportunity to address this meeting. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Dr. Moeti, and on behalf of the Executive Board, I wish to convey our appreciation. Mr. Adam and the UNV Secretariat will have the opportunity to respond and make comments themselves. But I wish to convey the appreciation of the board, hearing from WHO that is leading the UN response to COVID-19, to the global pandemic, and that is at the forefront of our response, hearing from you the important role that the volunteers have been playing, and their own significant contribution to this response. It is indeed heartwarming. So with these few words, let me now give back the floor to the Secretariat, and more specifically, Mr. Adam, for his response or comment. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I would like to thank the 15 delegations for their comments and their congratulations and their good wishes. I also would like to really take appreciation of Regional Director Dr. Moeti for her testimony of our cooperation with WHO, which obviously has accelerated in the last month and which has been expanding thanks to a global memorandum of understandings that we signed 3 years ago now with your organization, that has enabled us to work across regions, and more specifically in Africa, in especially identifying national talent to support your offices across the continent. There was only one question from the delegate from Sweden. I would like to reassure Sweden that obviously the program we have in placing volunteers with disability is not limited. It was piloted first with the Secretariat and with UNDP, but there is no restrictions as to where we can deploy these volunteers. We want to ensure, obviously, that there's adequate duty of care and support in deploying volunteers. And therefore, we have wanted to go progressively to take stock of what are the host entities' performance in hosting these volunteers and level of satisfaction of those volunteers that have various disabilities across the board. There's an overall wish of the Secretary General and the Deputy Secretary General to have people living with disability integrated in resident coordinator offices. And we are in discussion with the UN Secretariat to also make this happen and to use volunteers as a means to also increase the number of people living with disability in the UN, to be extended then more to regular staff in the future. So thank you to all. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Associate Administrator and all colleagues for this wonderful session. And see you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adam. Thank you for these comments, and and response to the question from the Swedish delegation. We are now coming at the end of this particular segment of our executive board. Let me conclude it once again by telling you, Mr. Adam, how appreciative we are for your really distinguished service. You leave a strong legacy, one that every civil servant will envy. You really leave a strong legacy and foundation at UNV. Obviously, I will use my prerogative as a chair to also indicate my personal appreciation in national capacity. We have worked very strongly and closely with UNV. Very appreciative of your interaction, your visit last year to Rwanda, your involvement with the national groups of volunteers, and very appreciative of your own personal commitment in including people living with disabilities, which you have just underlined. So clearly demonstrating that disabilities are not inabilities, but putting that in action by using the different abilities. So thank you once again. And it is a fact of the times we are in that we are having this session virtually, but it is not in any manner, in our appreciation, a reduced version of this interaction, because having it virtually precisely allows people who could not have made it physically to New York to be with us during this session and be present with us during your last presentation to the executive board, which is also an important element of inclusion. So I thank you once again. It is now I would now like to inform all delegates and participants that at this point we will change the virtual podium. We will now move to agenda item 11. However, before doing so, I wish to communicate to all participants a change in the program that you must have received through official communication from the Secretariat of the board. And the change is the following. In a previous program, you will recall that it was indicated that the afternoon session will resume at 4 p.m. The Bureau has decided to resume instead at 2 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. for the adoption of all decisions which have been negotiated during the course of this week and slightly before. So please do note that we will resume at 2 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. With those few words, it is now my pleasure to start the segment with agenda item number 11, United Nations Capital Development Fund, midterm review of the United Nations Capital Development Fund Strategic Framework, 2018-2021, including the annual report on results achieved by the UNCDF in 2019, and those can be found in document DP/2020/15. I'm joined on the podium by Mr. Murad Waba. I apologize for that, dear friend. Mr. Murad Waba, UNDP Acting Associate Administrator. Madam Judith Carl, Executive Secretary of UNCDF, Madam Sabine Mensah, the Regional Technical Specialist, Digital Finance of UNCDF, Madam Charmin Olsen, Investment Officer, and Mr. Anders Berlin, who is the head of the LDC investment platform. I will start by giving the floor to Mr. Murad Waba to make some introductory remarks. You do have the floor, please. Yes, you have the floor, Mr. Waba.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I have the honor, Madam Chair, to discuss agenda item 11 on the United Nations Capital Development Fund. Madam Chair, with your permission, this is also going to be, I'm afraid, a bittersweet moment for me, because as we look to the excellent results, in my view, of UNCDF this year, we also have to recognize that this is Ms. Judith Karls, the Executive Secretary of UN Capital Development Fund's last board session. I think we're all of a generation in UNDP. And as a friend and a dear colleague, I'd like also to pay my respects and express my admiration for her work. UNCDF, Madam Chair, plays an important strategic role in the UN development system, with a dedicated focus on supporting the least developed countries and with a unique mandate in the system on capital and ability to use loans and guarantee instruments. This substantially distinct offer makes UNCDF a critical partner, both to governments and other LDC stakeholders, as well as to UNDP and other UN entities. UNCDF has made solid progress in expanding its offer and delivering on its strategic framework in the past 2 years. With a set of robust approaches to support the LDCs to finance their sustainable development aspirations, and with strong results, UNCDF has now built a solid foundation to allow it to scale and accelerate its contributions to LDCs in this decade of action. UNCDF has also taken quick action in assisting LDCs to respond to COVID-19, as it delivers essential and high-demand support based on its expertise in digital finance, local government financing, and innovative finance for small and medium-sized enterprises. These enterprises, as you know, Madam Chair, which are responsible for, will be responsible, hopes for the recovery and the employment of millions and millions of men and women. The UNCDF has been, in the past years, a strategic partner for UNDP, with dozens of joint initiatives, including most notably the recent collaboration on the Secretary General's Task Force on Digital Finance and joint work with member states and other partners to keep remittances flowing throughout the COVID-19 crisis. UNCDF Executive Secretary Ms. Judith Karl will share further details about this progress. I would, however, note, Madam Chair, that this effort during COVID-19 has been instrumental in supporting societies dependent on small and medium-scale enterprises and on remittances in really sort of responding to the economic impact of the emergency. Perhaps I can be allowed just a short word of appreciation for Judith Karl. We have been friends for many, many years, and over a 30-year career in UNDP and UNCDF, Judith has been instrumental both in field and in headquarters settings. In addition to her exemplary tenure in UNCDF, if I may, Madam Chair and distinguished delegates, note that without Judith, we would not be where we are in terms of prescriptive content for UNDP, and certainly not be able to have measurable, verifiable results of the work of the organization. She has been instrumental in bringing this organization to a much more modern, results-based organization. And on behalf of UNDP, I'd like to express my personal thanks, and a good colleague and a good friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber, for this introduction and your words. It seems that I've had the privilege of chairing all sessions where we have really colleagues who have had a distinguished career, making their last presentation to our board. Let me just share with members that this is no indication that this might be my last board meeting myself. However, it is indeed a privilege to have the opportunity to thank those who have given the best of their abilities to what is public service, the nobility of public service. We will get time to get back to Madam Judith Carl, but at this stage, I wish to give her the floor to make her presentation. Of course, you would have noticed that given that we had a very long list of speakers during the previous session, we went over time. So it is clearly understood that we will not be able to end this session as was indicated on the program. We shall continue this session until 1 p.m. To have the opportunity to listen to the presentation and give members the opportunity to make their interventions or ask questions. So with those few words, it is a pleasure to give you the floor, Madam Carl.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and of course, my dear friend Morad, our Associate Administrator. I have to say it's a pleasure for me. It's a bit sad, but it's also a pleasure for me to be in this session with Morad, with Olivier. We have spent many, many long years together in the organization, and dear friends and great colleagues. There have been many great colleagues. I've also spent the last 15 years of my career in New York working directly with the member states and the executive board, from my work in the Crisis Bureau to my work on organizational effectiveness and results, and now these past 6 years with UNCDF. And I have to say it's a great privilege to be kind of coming full circle and ending my career on this note as well. I'll be with UNCDF until the end of the year, but this is my last board session. So thank you so much. I think we were going to run a video, but I think in the interest of time, I'll just dive right into my to my remarks and say that that of course we have been extremely active over the first 2.5 years of the midterm review, and just as the ink was drying on our report to you, the member states, on the midterm review, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic started spreading around the world. But even before that, we knew that we were witnessing uneven and insufficient progress on the SDGs in the least developed countries. The impacts of the COVID-19 crisis are still evolving, but with their weak health and social protection systems and their fragile economies, the consequences for the LDCs will be severe. And the challenges of addressing the economic impacts of COVID and of helping communities and municipalities to cope only reinforce the critical importance of building resilient local economic ecosystems for the poor. Our midterm review highlights the 3 main areas where we are making progress to this effect. And before I make my comments, I would just like to recognize all of the UNCDF staff. for not just their outstanding results achieved over these past 2.5 years, but particularly their continued engagement, commitment, and innovation during these past few months, and many of them in the face of quite considerable personal and professional challenges. So we have quite an extraordinary team, and we have been able to meet or exceed the majority of the targets in our strategic framework. And on that basis, we've been able to raise our ambitions in the second half of the strategic framework period, and those raised ambitions have been submitted to you in the paperwork along with the report for the first half of the framework. So first, as you know, one of our groundbreaking elements of UNCDF's strategic framework is the institutionalization of the LDC investment platform, originally established in 2017. With your agreement, we have now piloted and fully activated the full extent of our capital mandate, and we've established a professional capacity to deploy loans and guarantees for last mile investments in the LDCs. This responds to the pressing needs of LDCs to address the financing gap faced by small enterprises and small-scale infrastructure projects. Our joint 2018 and 2019 reports with the OECD and other partners on blended finance in the LDCs show that only 6% of private capital mobilized through blended finance approaches are reaching LDCs. Now, with the COVID-19 crisis, the situation is very unlikely to improve. We've recently surveyed more than 2,400 SMEs in all 47 LDCs to understand how COVID-19 is affecting them. And the initial findings are showing significant disruptions in small business operations, as we would all expect. 88% report substantial reduction in operations, and 34% are indicating that they will not be able to sustain their businesses beyond a 3-month time horizon. So if there was ever a time to ensure ODA resources continue to flow, to shore up local economies and unlock additional long-term private investment capital in the LDCs, that time is right now. We now have a pilot portfolio of 17 loans and guarantees positioned to demonstrate that last mile investments can be both financially viable and have significant development impact. These are investments that are not serviced by multilateral banks, by development finance institutions or private investors. They're not serviced by domestic banks because of their size and their risk profile. We are deploying a new team of 4 investment specialists in Africa to work with the wider UN system to identify investment opportunities that are both SDG positive and financially viable. These investments can then be supported with early stage finance from UNCDF directly on our own balance sheet and with larger follow-on financing from domestic and international capital providers. There are many examples of this kind of work, including in my longer written statement, which I have submitted for all of you in hard copy. As part of the last mile investment architecture we've put in place, we've partnered on a third-party managed blended finance fund for SMEs called the Build Fund. This fund is expected to mobilize up to $250 million in private and concessional capital. We are grateful to our donors for providing the first loss capital necessary to operationalize the Build Fund and for agreeing to follow this innovation and de-risking pathway with us. Excellencies, we have demonstrated proof of concept with this work, and we're now ready to move to more meaningful scale. In our current strategic framework, you welcomed our ambition to establish a $50 million revolving UNCDF investment fund to make the types of catalytic early stage investments that sets the stage for follow-on investors like domestic banks and private investors. Many of you have supported us in piloting the approach, and we are grateful for that. We now ask for all of your support to continue the journey and help us to fully capitalize this investment plan. In our second area of ongoing innovation, that is in local government finance. It includes local climate adaptation and municipal finance. An estimated 65% of SDG targets cannot be achieved without action by local governments. This includes climate change adaptation, SDG 13. UNCDF's locale mechanism directly supports 280 local governments representing 10 million people in 14 LDCs in areas such as road elevations, water filtration systems, flood walls, and tree plantations. This model integrates climate adaptation into planning and budgeting systems using a performance-based financing instrument to channel and manage resources. The mechanism has been recognized by the Secretariat of the UNFPA as a tool to localize national adaptation plans in line with the Paris Agreement. This effort is scaled up through the partner government's own resources, and with our support, government entities in Cambodia and Bhutan have already been directly accredited to the Green Climate Fund for localized climate adaptation finance. In the coming years, our ambition is to fully embed our local climate finance mechanism in all LDCs and connect them to sources of international climate finance, such as the Green Climate Fund. Other critical areas of concern are Africa's rapid urbanization and development of its productive capacities. To increase productivity and ensure that inequalities do not become locked into the urban fabric will require increased levels of investment at local levels. UNCDF is working closely with the United Cities and local governments, UN Habitat, and the International Finance Corporation, member states and partners to secure the policy, regulatory, and investment climate to address these challenges. And we are also making progress in supporting the mobilization of commercial capital for climate resilient municipal investments. We are helping to establish the International Municipal Investment Fund, a third-party managed blended finance fund targeted to raise 350 million euros. UNCDF will manage a technical assistance facility that will work with networks such as the UCLG to identify and prepare a pipeline of investment-ready municipal projects for this fund. Excellencies, these are important pieces of the work you have entrusted to us to assist local governments and LDCs to access larger amounts of public and private development and climate finance. We count on your continued support to take these ambitions forward. In our third area of work to support financial inclusion, we have connected 7 million people to access financial services in the 2018-2019 period. 4.2 million of these were reached through digital financial services. We have witnessed how digital financial services are increasingly embedded in other sectors of the real economy, whether agricultural extension services, access to markets for MSMEs, or clean energy solutions. The emergence of digital economies can be a powerful accelerator for SDG achievement. UNCDF is supporting this shift in LDCs. For example, in 2019, we helped bring clean energy products to over 3 million people through financial innovations. The Better Than Cash Alliance, which we host, has now 75 government and private sector members taking active steps to transition to digital payments. The rapid digital transformation is why we pivoted last year toward leaving no one behind in the digital era to pursue a market development approach to bring digital finance and digital economy solutions to scale in the LDCs. A main focus of the strategy is to ensure that digital transformation is inclusive and does not lead to growing inequalities. The LDCs are already lagging behind with only 1 in 6 citizens connected to the internet. We aim to ensure that women, youth, small farmers, migrants, and refugees also benefit from digital technologies and that digital economies lead to inclusive development. We will apply this strategy in more than 20 countries in the coming years. This includes a joint action platform with UNDP on follow-up to the recommendations from the UN Secretary General's Task Force on digital financing of the SDGs, which UNCDF played a key role in supporting. COVID has made it clearer than ever that digital connection can deepen resilience, while digital divide can deepen fragility. It is UNCDF's ambition to ensure that LDC populations are able to benefit and contribute equally to the positive dividends of their country's digital futures. Excellencies, we have discussed with you in the past months, our work has proved relevant to the COVID-19 response, and it is closely aligned with the UN framework for socioeconomic impacts of COVID-19. UNCDF guidelines for local governments to deploy emergency financial resources for COVID-19 response have been adopted in many countries, and we currently work in 6 countries to accelerate COVID response through local government action in line with WHO protocols. We also support accelerated digital payment solutions to keep payments flowing, and we finance innovations such as contact tracing apps and e-commerce solutions in more than 20 countries. With UNDP, the World Bank, and member state partners, as Murad already mentioned, we launched a global call to action to keep remittances flowing during the crisis. Finally, we have strengthened our capacity to deploy rapid grants and concessional loans to small and micro enterprises most at risk, including to enable them to adjust their business models to survive the crisis. Our COVID response remains dynamic and flexible as the needs become clearer and as we better understand the impacts. As we move forward, we're taking steps to ensure dynamic integration with the UN reform. We are deepening our collaboration with other UN entities to expand options for financially viable SDG investments in the LDCs. This will build on the successful collaboration funded through the Joint SDG Fund and our many ongoing partnerships with UN entities, including our 26 joint initiatives with UNDP. In cooperation with UNDP and the Development Coordination Office, we have also ensured a stronger participation in the UN country teams in a larger number of the LDCs where UNCDF has presence. Second, we will expand our partnerships and advocacy with the private sector. This includes continuing our collaboration with the OECD to advocate for improving conditions to attract private capital to LDCs through blended finance approaches. Third, we will continue to prioritize women's economic empowerment across all our work streams. This includes funding female entrepreneurs, working with UN Women and UNDP to benefit tens of thousands of women, and producing tools such as the Women's Economic Empowerment Index, which provides gender-sensitive investment criteria to assess and rank private sector and infrastructure investment projects. We will also expand our focus on women as builders of inclusive digital economies. Last, we will engage closely to support the 5th United Nations Conference on the LDCs and the next LDC Program of Action. As the only UN development entity fully dedicated to the least developed countries, UNCDF naturally views the LDC 5 as a top priority. Our ability to respond to growing demands is limited only by our footprint and our funding. We have had clean audit opinions in each of the past 7 years and have no long outstanding audit recommendations. Our resource situation has been stable but mixed. Contributions of non-core resources have reached an all-time high in 2019, up to $94.5 million, with a significant portion of that still as multi-year funding. However, our regular resources remain far below the target of $25 million per year in our strategic framework and represent less than 15% of our overall resource base. This constrains our innovation space and our ability to assure robust support to the targeted 40 LDCs foreseen in our strategic framework. We are still at about 31 LDCs where we have programmatic presence right now. We are also falling short of the one-time capitalization of our $50 million LDC investment platform that I mentioned earlier, and this is a top priority going forward. Our deep appreciation goes to all member states who provide both core and non-core resources, especially to our top core donors in 2019, who in many cases have also provided multi-year core funding and additional non-core funding. As in the past, we intend to present our blueprint for the next strategic framework in the upcoming January session. As all member states may be aware, UNCDF is one session behind UNDP, as it was in the last round of planning, in terms of our presentations to you of our roadmap and our framework, our strategic framework. So UNDP came with the roadmap for September and will come in January. That will be my successor's role. At UNCDF, in closing, we are ready to keep punching above our weight. While we're small, we also achieve significant impact. We have built the necessary foundations to scale up and be fit for purpose to partner with the LDCs to achieve the SDGs. And if I may, Madam President, in closing, allow me a very brief personal note that, as I've said, I am retiring at the end of a 30-year career with the UN. Actually, it's about 32 years. So it's been a long time. I've worked in 7 of the 9 bureaus of UNDP and now UNCDF, and I've worked in 3 of the 5 regions. It's hard to imagine really a more rewarding and fulfilling professional life than the one that I have been privileged to lead in the UN. I would like to thank all of you for the job you do as members of the Executive Board, the support you give, and the positive change you bring to the development prospects of the entire planet. I thank the administrator for his support to me throughout his tenure, and all the wonderful bosses and colleagues I've had over the years. One of the great assets, of course, of the UN system are its people. Above all, I'd like to recognize the extraordinary commitment, drive, and excellence of the staff of UNCDF, who have made my 6 years with the organization such a pleasure, and to pay tribute to their courage, their innovation, and their dedication over these past months in particular. I've always had a strong and abiding belief in the relevance and excellence of UNCDF finance models since I first encountered them in the mid-90s when I was serving in Cambodia. And I really look forward from a different vantage point to continuing to watch them grow and flourish in the years to come. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Madam Carl, for our presentation, as well as personal comments. Let me restate once again the appreciation of the board to yourself and through you to the entire team of UNCDF for the work that is not short of extraordinarily impactful, but not for me to say so. It's now the time of members to express themselves. At this stage, I will therefore open the floor for comments or statement from members, and start with those delivering group statements. I will start with the permanent representative of Malawi, who will speak on behalf of the LDC group, will be followed by the distinguished delegate and representative of Switzerland, who will also deliver a group statement. They will be followed by the following representatives who will deliver national statements at this stage. The permanent representative of Bangladesh, the permanent representative of Burkina Faso, the distinguished delegate of US, and the distinguished delegate from China. So this is my list at this stage. I will revert later. It is now my pleasure to give you the floor, Your Excellency, Ambassador Perks-Ugoya. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And let me thank Murad Waba and Judith Carl, who both we work with very, very well, and their teams as LDCs, making this statement on behalf of all the 47 LDCs. Let me start by thanking Judith, and it's sad to be bidding farewell to you after good work we have done together. And as you put it, it's been 30 years of your career in the UN, and we thank you for your public service, especially the service to the UNCDF, an institution especially there for LDCs with that special mandate. Let me sincerely thank you, Judith, for your work, leadership in UNCDF, and the team which you have. As you've put it, UNCDF is still small in terms of resources, that you command. But still, we would not fail to thank those donors who contribute to the budget, and wish more donors to come and add on to the resources. It is very clear now that with the pandemic, the demands for resources are a lot more now, starting with the need for more investment in LDCs. The UNCTAD report tells us that there will be a 40% decrease in investments in LDCs. That is very, very worrisome for all of us in our countries. And we are wondering ourselves, we are wondering where the extra investment will come from now. And this tells you how much more we need the involvement of UNCDF and other partners. UNCDF has been with us right from the beginning, and it's one of the institutions that we rely on in our countries, be it operational or policy advice. So we are very, very thankful for that. Particularly, we are thankful for the work you are doing in blended financing together with OECD. You know pretty well that the results of the studies you have done are that blended financing is not increasing as much as we all hope would do. And this is because of the wrong perception that people have that the risk is too much in LDCs for serious investors to come and invest. This is a wrong perception, and your studies show that it's not always true. So we encourage you to continue working with us on blended financing, and we hope that with this pandemic, more partners from the developed countries will realize the need for them to move into our region for more investment. We are also very thankful for the work you have done. You were part of the Commission on digital financing with the report that is out now. Malawi, as a country, has benefited greatly from UNCDF, you know that, and the results wherever UNCDF have been are very encouraging, because digital financing is one way that facilitates and even reduces the costs for transactions in our countries. Let me also mention the work you are doing. We are working very well with David Jackson in the local climate adaptive living facility. We call it LOCAL. It's very good work, and we are working now, as you mentioned, with UNFCCC and making sure that this is a facility that is well accepted in all LDC countries, SEEDs and LLDCs, because we have in the past been very worried to hear that only 20% or less of the money or the funding for climate, only 20% or less trickles down to the local people. This is very worrisome, and we see locale as a mechanism that will assist us to reach out to the local communities with the funds. And it's very encouraging to see that the Global Fund and other financiers, bilaterals, are coming in to join this initiative. So we want to thank you so much for that. We also thank you for the International Municipal Investment Fund, which is up and kicking. The need for your advice is much more now as we are going into the LDC 5 process. We know that our priorities will be vital as the 10 years we will be going into coincide with the end of our agenda, 2030 agenda. So a failure in whatever we come up with will mean failure to achieve the 2030 agenda. And let me be frank here. We talk about all the 17 SDGs, but if you look at it at the depth of it, what matters in all of them is financing. We cannot do much if we don't have the necessary financing to do our programs. Hence, the importance, Judith, of you and your team and whoever will come after you to join us every minute of the way in whatever we are doing. And we are thankful for your commitment in that. And we know that your mandate allows you to give loans and guarantees. In balancing the two, we see more need for guarantees because in our countries, we would do more if we involved the local banks in our countries, but with UNCDF guaranteeing, and that's another way of increasing blended financing with the necessary guarantees. And thank you very much for the work you're doing with the COVID-19. The areas, I'll try to make it short. The areas of
yes,
am I already over?
If yes, the ambassador, we are really over time, and
all right, okay,
we don't have the luxury to push forward this session.
I will finish by thanking the whole team and hoping that the work that UNCDF is doing with the Friends of Financing for Development will continue. I thank you, Chair. Sorry for taking much time, more time tonight.
I thank very much Ambassador Ligoya and Chair of the LDCs Group for his statement. Obviously, we've been generous with Ambassador Ligoya because he's speaking on behalf of 47 countries. Let me please call on all of you following speakers to stick to 5 minutes for those speaking on behalf of the group and 2 minutes for those speaking in their national capacity. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from Switzerland. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thanks for leading this session so well. And thank you to you, Madam Executive Secretary of UNCDF. Judith, it was a pleasure also working with you closely 2 years ago, and it's very sad that you are leaving, but thanks for the excellent presentation that you just made. I have the honor to present this statement on behalf of the following countries, which all provide regular resources to UNCDF: Australia, Austria, France, Luxembourg, Norway, Sweden, and my own country, Switzerland. We wish to congratulate the Executive Secretary Judith Karl and her team for UNCDF's achievements presented in the annual report 2019. Since it is Mrs. Karl's last board meeting, we wanted to thank her for her tremendous efforts to make UNCDF a truly innovative and successful UN organization. We would like to explicitly mention Madam Karl's efforts to build UNCDF's capacity to expand its mandate to issue loans and guarantees, which is unique in the UN system. With the investment platform for least developed countries, UNCDF now has a solid foundation in place to take this work forward. As the only UN organization with an almost exclusive focus on the LDCs and with a particular commitment to innovative finance solutions, UNCDF's work is crucial. LDCs still face a significant gap in access to finance, and we encourage UNCDF to continue working in places where financing sources are scarce and unavailable, like it has been presented very clearly by the permanent representative of Malawi in the name of the LDCs. We firmly believe UNCDF is filling a gap in the international financial architecture while providing finance in last mile setting. Particularly now, UNCDF's work will be even more needed in those countries that are heavily hit by the current health, social, and economic crisis. We must ensure that the progress of the last decades will not be reversed and that we can help economies to recover in a sustainable manner. Let me just highlight some elements that are of particular interest to us. In May this year, the call to action, Remittances in Crisis, How to Keep Them Flowing, was jointly launched by the governments of Switzerland and the United Kingdom in partnership with UNCDF, the World Bank, and other partners from the UN and the private sector. Alarmed by the estimated slump in remittances of 20% or around $110 billion in 2020 due to COVID-19, the call to action raises awareness about the potentially devastating effects of this decline for millions of people around the world. Remittances play a key role in many low and middle income countries for the achievement of the SDGs. With 9 concrete recommendations, the call to action encourages policymakers, regulators, and remittance service providers to improve access for migrants and diaspora communities to physical or digital remittance services. So far, 27 states from all regions of the world and 16 multilateral organizations, private sector entities, and civil society organizations have joined the call to action. UNCDF's technical expertise and network were a critical factor for the success of this call to action. Madam President, we believe that UNCDF has an important role to play within the wider UN system. UNCDF has the potential to become the entry point for the UN's work with financial instruments and innovations, both with public and private entities. UNCDF is an agile organization, and the UN development system should take even more advantage of this flexibility and enhance its roles. We would hope to see other agencies collaborate with UNCDF to make use of its unique instruments. With the Last Mile Trust Fund, UNCDF has an excellent tool which provides the kind of flexibility necessary for innovations. Madam President, to summarize, UNCDF has a very strong comparative advantage in creating and deploying financial instruments that support the private and public sector to reach the poor and tackle inequality and exclusion. It is crucial that UNCDF keeps their foot on the ground in LDCs. Not only is it a fundamental element of their mandate, it also is a strong element of UNCDF's added value. We warmly encourage other countries to consider a possible support to UNCDF's core resources, like it has also been mentioned by my pre-speaker. Even modest contributions make a significant impact on UNCDF's work at country level in LDCs. Regular resources enable UNCDF to deliver on its mandate in a cost-effective and agile way to the benefit of all stakeholders and partners. Finally, as mentioned at the beginning, we would like to thank again Madam Judith Karl for the outstanding work and commitment she has. We wish her all the best and especially good health in her new phase of life. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Switzerland, for the statement delivered on behalf of the group of countries mentioned. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to the Ambassador, Excellency the Ambassador of Bangladesh, to deliver a statement. You have the floor, Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Ambassador, can you see me?
We can see you and we hear you very well. You have the floor, Your Excellency and dear sister.
Thank you. Thank you. I thank you, Madam President, and it's so good to see you in the chair. Let me begin by thanking and congratulating Executive Secretary Ms. Judith Karl for her dedicated service and excellent leadership in steering the important work of UNCDF, especially during this difficult period. The LDC group as a whole is sad to see her leave, and I wish her all success in her future endeavors. My delegation fully endorses the statement delivered right now by the LDC chair. Allow me to say a few, briefly speak in my national capacity, Madam President. We deeply value the work of UNCDF in the LDCs. Bangladesh has long-standing partnership with UNCDF, which has a good track record of pioneering initiatives that the government and other development partners help scale up. Our collaborative work has good dividends in many areas, including digital financing and inclusion, technology-based women and entrepreneurship, climate change adaptation, and SDGs financing. And that is now playing an important role in our pandemic response and recovery efforts. UNCDF can play a vital role to support the LDCs during this pandemic. With the ongoing UNDS reform on the ground, UNCDF will have to bring important value addition to its work, particularly in terms of forging more strategic alliance with other UN actors and the host governments. Madam President, I have some specific comments and questions about UNCDF's possible role to help the LDCs recover better from the crisis. First, the pandemic has pushed many MSMEs in LDCs out of business, with millions left jobless and forced into poverty. I would like to know how UNCDF's LDC investment platform and last mile investment financial initiatives can help small entrepreneurs and small scale businesses address the financing challenges better, especially now to recover from the COVID-19 shock. Secondly, in many LDCs, SDGs implementation plans have been put on hold, with resources diverted to pandemic response. We need new kind of partnership and targeted support to help LDCs in this decade of action and the post-IPOA journey. If UNCDF could share, Madam President, how it plans to tailor its current and new strategic framework to mobilize more resources for SDGs financing in the LDCs. Finally, COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore the high importance of digital inclusion to close gaps between peoples and economies. How can UNCDF play a more effective role to help the LDCs in bridging the digital divide and unlocking the potentials for millions of peoples and entrepreneurs to integrate better with the global digital economy and financial market? I will rest it there. I thank you, Madam President, and I thank Ms. Karl once again from our behalf. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency, the Ambassador of Bangladesh, for your statement and questions, which are being duly noted by the UNCDF, and will give them time to respond later on. I now have the pleasure of giving the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador of Burkina Faso. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Madam Chair, I'm delighted to see you again at this session, and I congratulate you on the manner in which you preside over our work. I would like to thank Mr. Wahab for his introduction remarks. I would like to congratulate Mrs. Judith Karl, the Executive Secretary and her entire team, for the quality of the report on midterm review of the United Nations Capital Development Fund Strategic Framework including the annual report on the results achieved in 2019. My delegation endorsed the declaration made by the PR of Malawi on behalf of Ldcs. My delegation takes notes of the perspective presented and hopes that the partner will strengthen their development cooperation for landlocked developing countries such as Burkina Faso through policies favorable to mixed financing, including the acceleration of inclusive foreign direct investment. Indeed, UNCDF, by virtue of its position in role, can strengthen investors' confidence and achieve surprising results as its performance framework already shown. Madam President, in Burkina Faso, UNCDF is supporting the government in the implementation of several projects and programs, and as an illustration, I will mention a few of them. In the area of health, with the COVID-19 pandemic, UNCDF provides support by contributing to the putting online of a united digital platform for pandemic management that offers its users true information, verified data, and assistance when needed. In the area of agriculture, UNCDF implemented a program of support for appropriate financing for family farming to improve access to financial services that met the needs of small producers or actors in value claims, have thereby contributing to improving food security, youth and self-employment, and income stabilization in rural areas, particularly for women. UNCDF is also implementing a program to support economic and climate resilience for population through financial and digital innovation that aim to reduce economic disparity between men and women and strengthen the access for farmers and micro, small, and medium enterprise to appropriate finance services. In addition, UNCDF is studying business opportunities in the forest resources subsector and has organized a meeting with microfinance institutions and banks, as well as technical and financial partners. Here are some projects. So for all the support, on behalf of my government, I would like to thank the Executive Secretary and all the entire team and the partners who collaborate with UNCDF in its innovative scheme for sustainable development. And I thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency, the Ambassador of Burkina Faso, for his statement, and wish now to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the US. You have the floor.
Thank you. Madam Executive Secretary, the United States would like to express our appreciation for your leadership of UNCDF for the past 6 years, and we congratulate you on your successful 32-year career in the UN development system. We particularly appreciate your strong engagement with private sector partners to find pragmatic and innovative solutions relevant for LDCs. We wish you all the best. The United States appreciates the excellent work UNCDF has done as outlined in the midterm review report and results matrix. The UNCDF team has pivoted well in its efforts to support local governments and the local private sector in light of changing local fiscal constraints and local economic disruption. As the international community faces challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, and while much global attention has focused on humanitarian assistance, UNCDF's work, along with that of other development partners, is critical to ensure that LDCs do not lose the development gains already achieved to help them build more stable, dynamic, and resilient economies than before. We note that while core contributions to UNCDF have remained constant, the organization's total 2019 resources grew considerably, reaching 148 million. We encourage UNCDF to continue to expand its engagement with the private sector to develop innovative solutions, new challenges, particularly during the time of local economic constraints and disruptions. The midterm review report notes that program evaluators have recommended an increased focus on scaling up and replicating approaches to strengthen collaboration with government partners. We would be interested in learning more about UNCDF's plans to address these recommendations. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate from the US for his statement and have now the pleasure of giving the floor to the distinguished delegate from China. You have the floor.
Madam Chair, Excellencies and colleagues, thank Acting Associate Administrator, Mr. Wahab, for his introduction, and also thank Executive Secretary, Madame Cao, for her comprehensive report. China highly appreciates UNCDF's work for the midterm results achieved in the implementation of the strategic framework under the excellent leadership of Executive Secretary Judith Cao. China commends UNCDF's work in achieving strategic framework results on financial inclusion, local development, and innovative finance. We also highly value the quick action of UNCDF in the support to LDCs in the fight against COVID-19. UNCDF's establishment of the LDC investment platform and the use of loans and guarantees to support small businesses and local governments contribute to poverty alleviation and the implementation of SDG targets in LDCs. UNCDF's work is vitally important in supporting LDCs in the new decade of action toward SDGs. We hope that all parties will actively support UNCDFs and provide funds and other support to enable them to help LDCs and the LDC people in realizing their full potential, elevating poverty, eliminating inequality, and achieving inclusive, sustainable growth. I wish to join my previous speakers and to commend Madame Cao for her dedication and valuable service. I wish her all the best in her future endeavor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the distinguished delegate from China for her statement. And it is now my pleasure to give the floor to the following delegations. The Republic of Korea will be followed by the Russia Federation. And at this stage, this shall close my list of speakers. So it is now a pleasure to give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, for giving me the floor. First of all, we would like to express our sincere appreciation to Executive Secretary Madame Judy Cao for her leadership during her tenure at UNCDF. Under a strong and able guidance, UNCDF has made important progress on its strategic framework and leaves us in a good place. As the COVID-19 pandemic has shed light on intersections of vulnerability, UNCDF's mandate to discover innovative and new financial tools and instruments for the people most in need is even more crucial in our development pathway. The Republic of Korea commend UNCDF for the positive result achieved last year, building on its competence for innovative financing for the poor, which can benefit the UN development system. In this regard, we are glad that Korea International Cooperation Agency, the leading ODA agency of Korea, joined UNCDF's Last Mile Finance Trust Fund this year to support small businesses. Korea is also pleased to have hosted a well-attended webinar last July, where UNCDF introduced the LDC investment platform tools and concepts to Korean aid practitioners. We believe such a diversified partnership can contribute to expanding the innovative financing model on the ground to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. While appreciating ongoing effort to diversify partnership, we are also keen to hear UNCDF's best practice at global and regional level in its joint effort with other UN agencies like UNDP, UNFPA, UNOPS, and other agencies to combat COVID-19 in a broad context. Finally, I wish to join other speakers to wish Madam Executive Secretary all the best in our future endeavors. Thank you. Over to you.
I thank the distinguished delegate from the Republic of Korea for a statement, and now have the pleasure of giving the floor to the distinguished delegate from the Russia Federation. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would like to express our words of appreciation to the work of UNCDF and Mr. Judith Karl's personal dedication to UNCDF's cause. The mandate of UNCDF is deeply rooted on the principle of leaving no one behind by promoting access to finances to the people and LDCs, especially at the local level. We therefore commend UNCDF's work at the local economic development and fiscal decentralization. Madam Chair, we would also like to welcome UNCDF's work in response to COVID, especially by further strengthening its work on digital finances and on including contact tracing systems and redeploying finances to protect the people. We also would like to welcome the fact that three priorities of UNCDF's strategic framework are on track, and the fact that in 2019 UNCDF saw the highest level of resource mobilization. Madam Chair, in the end, we would like again to thank Ms. Karl for her dedication and wish her the best of luck. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegate from the Russia Federation for a statement. And at this stage, having no other requests for the floor, it is my pleasure to give the floor back to the Secretariat, more specifically to Madam Karl, and if she wishes any of her colleagues to respond to the questions raised by members, I will request you to provide those responses within 5 minutes, please. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you very much to all member states for your comments and your well wishes. Briefly, let me respond to. I had some questions from the distinguished delegate from Bangladesh regarding both SME finance and digital divides. And interestingly, Bangladesh is one of our greatest innovation partners on both of those fronts, where a great deal of demonstration and scale work is being done, and we use a lot of the work that we do in Bangladesh as examples to other countries. For instance, in the SME space, we worked with the government and the Central Bank of Bangladesh using $250,000 of our own resources, $250,000, to demonstrate the application of a partial credit guarantee scheme to helping to shore up SME finance and provide and help them access bridge financing in difficult times. And the government is now in the process of scaling up that credit guarantee scheme with government resources, and the Bangladesh Bank has either, to my knowledge, already signed or is in the process of signing such a partial credit guarantee. And this is very much related to the difficulties that the SME sector has been experiencing as a result of COVID. we are able to work with domestic banks, with government actors and with private actors on everything from the individual transaction level to the structured facility or mechanism level for something like this kind of a credit guarantee scheme, or working with governments even through sovereign fund architectures and others to be able to structure mechanisms that can reach down into the local economy and give access to SMEs that typically will not be able on their own to gain access to bank credit, either because they don't have the credit record already established or because they're too small and perceived to be too risky. And these are some of the reasons why it's so important to us to be able to fully capitalize our investment fund with the $50 million in the strategic framework. Because without the capitalization, we don't have the $250,000 for the demonstration effect and the original creation of the business model. And we may not have the flexibility to be able to find that funding from the wider market, because this tends to be perceived as very risky, even though we would agree with the Malawi permanent rep that guarantees can be one of the most effective instruments to drive domestic banks to a more confident approach to providing credit to small and medium enterprises. So those are some of the ways we work. On the digital divide, I think that also Bangladesh has been a very interesting leader in both the work that we've done with the private sector in Bangladesh, the textile industries and other industries, and accelerating digital payments. And digital payments then between employers and employees become the bedrock for the financial services sector to then build out ecosystems that are digitally based ecosystems and build into other parts of the economy. So we work through policy, we work through South-South learning, we are testing with UNDP in 2 cases how to get digital financing of SDGs as an integral part of the analysis and thinking in the international frameworks for financing of the SDGs, the INFFs. And we have many different entry points for that work. What I would say is, particularly for the LDCs that are suffering from an underinvestment in the internet architecture, in the basic infrastructure of connectivity, that statistic that I gave you that in some LDCs overall, that there's such a low level of connectivity in some countries, that the basic infrastructure needs to be built out, and that investment will not come through UNCDF and through the UN system. That investment will typically come either through the IFIs or through other avenues. So advocating with both institutions at the same time are very important, and the outcome of the Secretary General's digital task force are important impetus for that process. Scaling up of our initiatives, the question from the US is an ongoing concern for us. We work on what we call a maturity model, which is that we demonstrate first, we then work on replication and scale, and then we work on actually integrating it into national systems, into private sector systems, so that they're using their own resources for scaling models. We have a long, decades-long history of doing that with fiscal decentralization models that we initially scale with our own resources, and then governments use their resources to scale those. And that is increasingly beginning to happen with the Locale Climate Adaptation Finance Initiative, both with domestic government resources as well as with Green Climate Fund and vertical resources. And of course, our financial inclusion work has long been operating at scale. If we say that connecting financial services with millions of new clients qualifies at scale, but that's only one measure. The other measure is whether the sector itself, whether the business models are getting picked up and replicated by other businesses. And that does show up in the evaluations as something we need to do more work on, particularly in difficult markets where reaching out to core clients is a more expensive, labor-intensive process. And so that is part of our ongoing business model. So with that, I hope I've been able to respond in the time allotted. I'm very grateful again to everybody. It's with a certain amount of sadness that I say thank you and goodbye, and thank you to you, Madam President, and to all members of the board for what I know will be a continuing and strong relationship between the member states and UNCDF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your response, Madam Carl, and on my own behalf and on behalf of the board, really express our best wishes for your next path, what you decide to do. We wish you the very best and receive once again our profound appreciation for your contribution and for your leadership and stewardship of the UN CDF. At this point, I would like also to thank all participants with us here, having such a high number of participants at this point of our session and meeting on a Friday is clearly an indication of the importance that members attach to the work of UNCDF. So I thank all of you very much. Before adjourning this current meeting, I wish to remind delegations that we will reconvene in the virtual plenary at 2 p.m. to adopt the decisions and to close the session. So please do remember that we will reconvene in more or less exactly 1 hour at 2 p.m. instead of what was previously indicated in the issue schedule. I thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues.